Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Super Subs Podcast with your host, Narvin Amatia. I am missing my co-host today, Harish, who is out of town. Um, so in this recording, I'll just be going over Match Week 16, just recapping the weekend from Saturday as well as today's games. Um, And like always, we'll start off with Super Sub of the Week. And my Super Sub of this weekend is going to be the former United youngster who unfortunately moved on to better things to head start his career at Nottingham. But Anthony Alonga, I thought him coming off the bench was great impact, especially with fresh legs, giving Villa some trouble. He got what he thought was an assist, which was called back for offside, but ultimately got the winner to secure all 3 points for Nottingham. But we'll get into that game a little later in this episode. Um, so to start off, we can start with the Arsenal versus Everton game. So there were three games going on at the 10 a.m. window. No games 7:30 in the morning. So one of the three games in the 10 o'clock window was Arsenal Everton, which I thought was one of the more boring games. And this one was boring in terms of just Everton wasn't creating anything throughout the game. They were really sitting. I'll give credit defensively, very compact, very. I thought honestly, all four of that back line for Everton did a superb job. Mikolenko had his troubles in the first half, but that second half he really kept Saka quiet. And again, this has been a common theme from what I've seen from Arsenal, but they haven't been dangerous from open play. Um, it's really their set pieces where they're a threat, but I know I had predicted that the set piece wouldn't really work for him against Everton just because Everton they got so many big bodies, like Branthwaite, Tarkowski there. So Everton did a good job mitigating Arsenal's strengths in this game. Um, and another shout out will be definitely to Pickford. He was making tremendous saves. Um, but yeah, again, I'll just read out some stats because Arsenal just they didn't really impress me that much. Their expected goals first half was only .66. Um, second half it was .56. And so both halves fairly quiet. Um, and honestly it was a bit of a snooze fest. So I want to move on to another game, which was the Ipswich versus Wolves game. This one, this game was definitely important in terms of the relegation battle. Wolves, um, they were sitting in 19th, or sorry, they were sitting in 18th place, and Ipswich were sitting in 19th. So coming into the game, definitely a relegation battle game. And a big one for Gary O'Neill in terms of his job security. I thought is a must win game for him. Um, Ipswich they got a goal through great play by Delap, kind of shrugging off his defender, classic big body striker move. But then unfortunately Chaplin gets a shot off, but it gets kind of deflected. Counts as a own goal for Matt Doherty. And so Wolves were down quite early in the 15th minute, and Ipswich had a few more chances. 58th minute, Delap, for his standards, he missed a pretty good opportunity to put Ipswich ahead 2-0, but it was about the 70th minute where Cunha gets another goal, which I thought was poor goalkeeping. Got beat near post. Did have some power, but still, Miric kind of closed the angle, and the front near post was really the only option Cunha had, so it should have been saved. But that kind of gave Wolves a momentum. Strand Larson missed a good chance after that, but then late winner from Jack Taylor off a corner kick gave Ipswich the win. It was literally 94th minute, last kick of the game. So unfortunately, there were news that came out, and it's confirmed Gary O'Neill is sacked. Uh, Wolves, they just had a really tough start to the season just because of the matchups they had. It was they were playing all the top teams, and when you go on such a winless run, your confidence just takes a hit, and ultimately they just couldn't recover from it. And it's been a really disappointing season for them thus far. So we don't know who the candidates are for the Wolves job, but if I had to guess, it might be Graham Potter. Um, we saw what Graham Potter can do with the smaller sides, leading kind of changed Swansea a bit, and then at Brighton, that kind of got him the status to get the move to Chelsea, but then didn't really work out at Stamford Bridge. But we might, I think we might see a revitalization of his career, taking the Wolves job. But to move on from that game, we'll go on to Liverpool versus Fulham. This one was an extremely exciting game. Most of Fulham's attacks uh, that were dangerous came from the left side with link-up play between Anthony Robinson and Iwobi. Uh, Trent again, he was reverting slightly back to his older days, having a really tough time. Um, kind of deciding on which man to pick up. Um, and to be fair, he was kind of left on an island just because Salah doesn't help defensively. And I'm looking at a few notes that Harish had sent me, and from this game, he says that brother Kwanzaa had a stinker when he came on. Um, but just to recap, first half, Fulham took the lead through an Andres Pereira goal, and then Andy Robertson, he had a miscontrol off a long ball, and Harry Wilson was through on goal, and Robertson had to take him down. It was a bit debatable just because Van Dijk was tracking back, but the ref thought it was a clear chance on goal, so Robertson was shown the straight red. And with Liverpool already being down 1-0 and having a player sent off, um, I thought Fulham were gonna get a surprising win. But Liverpool, surprisingly, they still looked pretty bright, even with the man down. They had a few chances. Luis Diaz, I thought he missed a relatively easy header. I think if Jota was in that position, he definitely would have buried it. And then Liverpool ended up getting a goal early in the second half through a brilliant cross by Salah, who, for his standards, he was a little quiet this game. Shout out to Anthony Robinson, who did a good job kind of mitigating Salah throughout the game. But to his standards, he was a bit quiet, but he did get the assist to Gapgo. Um, like we've mentioned, Salah, he can be quiet throughout the entire game, but you give him one sniff of a chance, he can kill you there. So assist to Gapgo, well taken goal, and Liverpool really had the momentum from there. I think it was the like 65th minute. Fulham were on the attack, got the corner, and then Liverpool they were on a crazy counter. And I thought Salah, to his standards, he would have buried it, but he puts it over. And then Fulham they grab what I thought was the winner, relatively late in the 76th minute. Um, Another assist by Anthony Robinson um, to Muniz. But then 86th minute, uh, Jota, he had a quality move where he just drops his shoulder. Fulham, they had to play both their replacement center backs. And so their center, defensively, Fulham was doing well, but one of their center backs just, with that drop of the shoulder, completely got fooled. And Jota grabbed the equalizer. So Liverpool, they still sit top of the table, but couldn't extend that lead. But that's a that's a well-deserved point for being a man down, the situation they were in. So that was probably the best 10 o'clock window game. And the last 10 o'clock window game was Newcastle Leicester. This one was quite one-sided. I thought Newcastle just completely dominated. Um, Reed Van Nistelrooy has a lot of work to really fix this Leicester squad. They got tormented 4-0. I thought Isak just ran the show. He got in a goal. He got in a goal and assist. Lewis Hall grabbed two assists. I mean, Newcastle, they were just so dominant. So I don't want to spend too much time. I'll read some stats out, but expected goals throughout the game is 3.79. They had 27 shots, 11 on target. Um, Whereas Leicester, their expected goals was 0.19, four total shots and one on target. Um, so you can just clearly see how one-sided it was. So I won't spend too much time. Shout out to Jacob Murphy, who also got a brace. I thought he had a really good game. Barnes and Gordon, I always feel like should be the starters, but Eddie Howe seems to love Murphy, and Murphy kind of paid paid back his dues for Eddie Howe giving him his trust. So those were the 10 o'clock game windows. And then 12:30, it was a matchup, top four, top five matchup. Crazy to say in this day and age, but Nottingham versus Aston Villa. First half is a bit boring, bit of a snooze fest, but the second half is where a lot of the action really picked up. I think it was the big story of this game again was Duran getting the start over Ollie Watkins, and ultimately, again, Duran getting on the score sheet. Right before Duran scored, Emi Martinez made, I would say, save of the season. It was a um, Forest corner, and they had a point blank header that was saved on the line by Martinez. Um, and it was just a few minutes later um, that Villa go on the other end and grab the lead through a well taken goal by Duran. It is a goal that required a lot of power from his header, because he was almost at the PK spot, a little even further back. So he had to generate a lot of power. It was uh, it was what Harish calls it, a proper prime Barclays goal. Um, and so Villa kind of picked up the momentum, but Nottingham, they still had a lot of chances. Um, Gibbs White, he's been a great um, he's just been a great fit at Nottingham, kind of dictating play. But also Elliot Anderson, he's been a really surprising star on that team. The way he's bossing that midfield with Gibbs White, but looking at Harish's notes, he also has Anthony Elanga as his super sub of the week. So we both have Elanga as our super subs on the right side when he came on. Um, like I mentioned when discussing about Elanga, they had a goal uh, by Chris Wood, Anthony Elanga assist, but it got called back because of the offsides. But um, they got they got a goal. Milinkovic back on the score sheet. Um, Big Body getting another goal in the 87th minute, and then um, stoppage time winner by Anthony Elanga. Elliot Anderson does a pretty clever, makes a pretty clever run, and then gets puts in a really good cross. Picks out a really good cross to get Elanga on the score sheet. So big important win for Forest, and they're sitting pretty good above City at fourth place. Um, Villa, they're having a little bit of trouble, but based on their play, they've been picking it up slightly, but they're still lacking a little bit. Um, I know it's a bit tough. We've seen it when Newcastle, when they got into Champions League, you could just see it took a toll on them, and that's a little bit of the case with Villa as well. But they're not in bad position, still in sixth place. Um, so we still got a little bit over half the season left, so they can turn things around. Um, so those were all of Saturday's matches. Now, if we go on to today's games, first one was Brighton versus Palace. I thought the way Brighton's been playing and their record at home that this would be a game that Brighton would win. Um, but that first half, Brighton were so poor. Um, Palace, I thought a standout player for them was definitely Ismail Sarr, who he got two goals, but to be fair, uh, his second goal was just poor defending. Um, well, let me kind of go through. Um, they get their first goal off a corner kick. Kind of bad. It was a good ball by Will Hughes, but Brighton didn't really deal with it, and Chalaba got on the score sheet. And then their second goal, they play across. Palace play across field. Lamptey, who's been playing well recently, he just misjudges the flight the ball, goes over him, and so Tyreek Mitchell puts in a floating cross, and I felt like Brighton were a bit asleep there, and Sarr just gets the easy headed goal. Get a 2-0 lead right before half. Um, but that second half, I thought Brighton really turned up. I'm not sure why they didn't play like that in the first half. Second half, they had plenty of opportunities. Um, I thought Henderson made a few really quality saves, um, especially the one on Enciso's shot where he put it bottom right corner, but literally gets like his fingertips to it. And so Brighton, a goal was definitely coming for him. Um, but then again, it was just the style of play that Hurstler plays, quite aggressive, and so he can leave he can leave some open gaps. But that third goal, ball just kind of pops up, and from a veteran like Lewis Dunk, I think it was poor defending. Sar just gets between him and Van Hecke, uses his pace and just slots it home. Get basically seal the win 3-0 at that point. But then late in the game, around the 88th minute, Brighton get a goal off a Gahey own goal. Now let's move on to the 11:30 match, which was the highly anticipated, well, not highly anticipated, but the Manchester Derby um, is going to be one of what I was saying uh, lower quality derbies we've seen in a few years, just because of the form that City's been in. Only one win in 10, and obviously the form we've been in trying to just develop our style and kind of chemistry still under our new manager. And coming into the game, there was some big news. Amarin, he decided to leave out Rashford and Garnacho from the squad. Um, and said it wasn't necessarily for disciplinary reasons, but just because of performances and practices and basically outside factors. So it could have been attitude issues. Um, Only he will know, but I mean, that's a big call to make. Because even Rashford, I mean, even when he's way off form, whenever it comes to playing against a Big Six team, it always seems like he'll get on the score sheet. Um, or at the least, coming off the bench could be an impact. Same with Garnacho. He's definitely he's definitely great when he starts, but even better off the bench. Sometimes he's not as consistent when he's starting, the decision making, but that'll just come time as he develops. So just a big call in general to leave the two of them out from the squad. Um, Really gutsy call, but anyways, the game, I thought the first half was quite even. I think City probably had the edge there in the first half. Honestly, I think Phil Foden had one of his better games that first half, kind of picking up pockets of spaces, had a few good shots, opportunities. Um, I know City didn't have a true left back. They kind of had Nunes playing higher up the pitch, inverting into the midfield role, and defensively kind of dropping back, filling in that left-handed side. Since Vardiol and Diaz were the center back pairing. Um, and I thought we could have exposed them more, but first half we were relatively quiet. Um, I will say Bruno, he had a he had a good game overall. Same with Ahmad, and one more shout out I think will be Manuel Ugarte. I thought he had a standout game, but that first half, City they grabbed a goal in the 36th minute. Vardiol, that was a great header off a unfortunate deflection um, by Diallo on De Bruyne's cross. But City take the lead going into half, and I thought the second half we really dictated the game. Um, there were times where we were dominating possession, but it wasn't really going anywhere. But still, we were the ones that were dictating the tempo, um, creating some of the more dangerous chances. Um, there was one there's one chance where Hoyland is great hold up play, slips in Bruno, and the way the ball was going, I thought Bruno slotted it in, but he missed. Um, and that was around probably the 70th minute, so I thought the best we could do is maybe equalize, but 80, 85th, 86th minute, Nunez poor back pass to Ederson and Diallo, fair play. He was alert to it. First one to kind of recognize that danger and quickly jumps on the ball and um, intelligent play by him because he kind of sees Nunez tracking back to recover from his mistake, and he cuts back, and Nunez tackles him for a PK, and Bruno uh, gets the equalizer in the PK. And then just a few minutes later, Lissandro puts a beautiful ball right between the two center backs, and Ahmad, amazing first touch, gets a goal. Um, Love his celebration. I mean, he just loves this club, and we ultimately get the 2-1 win. So I was super happy with the performance. I think I mentioned it last episode. I think past few episodes, just how proud I've been of Amad Diallo. It's funny, like I'm talking like he's my son or something. But I think that's how a lot of United fans feel is just like almost like a proud father because we've seen the talent that Ahmad really has and just how he's been kind of treated unfairly. I know I used to always tell Harish whenever he'd be trolling, I'll just be like, just wait till Ahmad starts playing for us. But I feel like I feel like if at Ten Hag stayed, Ahmad definitely might have been on his way out just since he wasn't getting the chances. But I love that Amarin sees that there's a true talent. Um, because Ahmad, he really, whether come from playing that wingback role or the inverted striker role, which he played today, he really affects the game. He's not scared to take on players. When he does, he's really successful. Um, and so I think overall he had a great game. Bruno, I thought he had a great game as well. I know he missed the easy chance, but other than that, I thought he was really dictating the game, that midfield, setting the tempo for us. Um, and then another player whose past few performances going under the radar, but I think is almost a nailed on starter for us is Manuel Ugarte. He's not the flashiest of players, but definitely definitely a steady Eddie. He'll give you he'll give you work ethic. I mean, he got legs, run for days, covers so much ground. And he was reading the game pretty well today, making some interceptions. Um, and so he'll keep you the possession. Won't take the risky passes, but keep it simple. Keep the ball moving. And so I thought he had a really great game as well. That no one really has been talking about. So those were my three standout performers. Um, and then lastly, want to wish Mason Mount a speedy recovery. It's just unfortunate his injury record since joining us because Amarin does seem to like him, especially what I've seen in training videos. And I've always said if we get the 20, I believe it's a 2021, 22 Mason Mount, that'd be a game changer for us because that version of Mason Mount was, I think, unplayable at times. But we just haven't seen that version, especially since he's come to United, and just constantly getting injured just doesn't help. So as great as that win was, I also want to talk a little bit about City. It's it's shocking just how a team that we've all known to be the world's best team past couple years just have this quick of a downfall. Like it's a head scratcher. They look so vulnerable. And it's not in just the Premier League that they're struggling. It's even the Champions League, Carabao Cup. Like they're just in shambles. Rodri obviously is a big miss, but to have a great team, you can't just. Yeah, he's a big miss, but I feel like there's more to it than just Rodri. Kyle Walker, he's having a really tough time. Um, I think City really should have done anything in their power to get him transferred to Bayern. Because it's crazy, but Kyle Walker is definitely looking like a liability at the back. Um, and then that second goal, as great of a goal it was from our side, it's also a really poor goal to concede. Because when Martinez first got the ball, you saw Diallo initially making the run and then kind of stopping. So I thought Vardiol would have seen Diallo, but he still doesn't really react. And then ultimately, Martinez makes that pass, splitting the two. So poor goal to concede there. Um, so I don't know, Pep. He's he's gonna have a really tough time. That's twice he's lost to Amarin. I know he's in one of the conferences. He said that he's having a tough time sleeping and eating just because of City's troubles just getting to his head. Um, and so even when City did score, Pep didn't look happy. He didn't really celebrate. He was just like he didn't really have a great reaction to it. So it's it's crazy seeing Pep like this, seeing his team in this kind of form. Um, because if City won, they would have been tied with Arsenal in points. 30 points sitting in third place. But they're sitting in fifth at 27, and this was a big one for us as well because if we lost, craziness, but we would have been 7 points above relegation. But instead, we're sitting in 13th at 22, right behind Newcastle, and yep, right behind Newcastle, right behind Brentford, and also just 1 point off of Tottenham, who are sitting in 10th. So that mid-table is still really tight in terms of points. And I really hope that this game is kind of like the turning point for us in Amarin, because it's always a big deal again, up, getting a win over your rivals, even if they're not in their best state of form. I mean, it's still City, the defending champs, so we'll take that victory. Now, moving on, there were actually two more games today, in the 2 o'clock window. One of them was Southampton versus Tottenham. This one I'll kind of just go over relatively quickly. To sum it up, just one-sided, and Tottenham just was very dominant. Southampton, they look like a relegation team. They honestly look like one of the worst Premier League teams I've seen in a long time. I think I said that about Sheffield last year, um, but I think Southampton have outdone them. They're so poor. They conceded 3 goals within 13 minutes. That's ridiculous. And oh wow, as I'm recording this, I just got news that Southampton sacked Russell Martin. Thank the Lord. That man deserved to be sacked. Wow. That's crazy. Literally while I'm recording this. But yeah, Tottenham 3 goals in 13 minutes. And Russell Martin, it's funny he got the sacking just because of this story, but Russell Martin, he makes a tactical sub by subbing out one of his players after that third goal. And Um, I texted Harish and I was like, this man making subs when he's the one that needs to be substituted from the touchline. Oh man, that's awesome. I'm not a fan of Russell Martin. I don't think he's a great coach. I don't think Southampton should have even made it to the Premier League. I know ultimately they won that championship game to get the promotion, but Leeds were the far better team that game anyways. They were just a bit unfortunate with their finishing. But anyways, yeah, Tottenham, they ended up grabbing five goals all in the first half. Um, so yeah, it was just a poor game. Very one-sided. Southampton fans, I feel for them. The stadium was emptying out after that third goal went in, so that just tells you the state that they're in at the moment. And then going on to the last game of the weekend and the other 2 o'clock game window is Chelsea versus Brentford. Um, I know it's unfortunate that Harish isn't here because I'm sure he would have had a lot to rave about Chelsea. This was a really entertaining game. A lot of chances both ways. Especially Chelsea. I thought Flecken, he had a very good game for Brentford. As the goalkeeper, he made some really good saves. But just looking at, I'll read out some of the notes that Harish kind of sent me on this game, as he is the Chelsea fan, just to see his thoughts on the game. But these were his notes. So ultimately, he said Chelsea were the better team, but Sanchez did make a ton of incredible saves, and that Chelsea also wasted a lot of golden opportunities, which I agree. Jackson, he had a lot of chances that he squandered. Um, he goes on to say the bench was definitely light with injuries and suspension, um, and games. Um, the bench was definitely light with injuries and suspension. Um, and players were also getting too comfortable and wasting chances. And he thinks if they had a stronger options on the bench that Enzo would have used the subs to make those changes. Um, and then in the end, it ended up being a very scrappy game, but glad that Chelsea were still able to pull out a win. Um, in every title winning campaign, you have some of those ugly, tough games, and champions typically find a way to win, which is what we did. And that's a great that's a great comment to point out. Um, not every win is going to be pretty. Sometimes you just need to find a way to grab a win. Um, and ultimately, that's what Chelsea did. He goes on to mention he was hurt watching Jackson today because he had some really great opportunities to climb up the leaderboard, but missed some sitters. That I agree. That second half, which I think it was around 70th minute. I believe it was Sancho who put in the cross. To be fair, it did come at him quite quickly, but he missed what I would call a tap in. Um, and then he goes on to mention that Enzo Fernandez and Casado were a huge question mark coming into the season playing together, but they look terrific, and Enzo has really found his form again. Um, and I agree with that as well, completely. Um, well, to the extent that he's really picked up form since um, the split with his wife. Uh, I'm not gonna make jokes about that again, but in all seriousness, ever since he got that split with his wife, he's been on another level. I think he's really been finding ways to dictate games himself. Before I've and still they're relying a lot on Palmer, but not just solely on Palmer, if that makes sense. Like Enzo, he definitely can take control of the game as well. I believe he had a really good performance. And even playing, I think the slight tweaks uh, that Maresca should get credit for is kind of pushing Enzo a little further up the pitch, not putting him as that deep lying playmaker with Casado. So I think that's helped out. But I think this was a game. Chelsea, they got a goal 43rd minute by Cucurella, um, flying in for a header. Uh, he didn't have any slips this time around. I don't think he was wearing Puma cleats, but he grabs a goal right before half. Terrible, terrible celebration, as the commentators pointed out. I don't know why he was copying the Hakimi Penguin celly. But after that, Chelsea, I thought were I thought the first half was a bit more even. Um, Jackson, he had a few misses here and there, but credit again to Flecken for good saves. But I think second half is when Chelsea really took control, um, and had a lot of chances that were missed. Um, and the further the game went on, I thought Chelsea would get punished for all the missed chances. Um, but ultimately, 80th minute, Nicholas Jackson grabs another goal. This player, he he's a real proper striker now. Link up play and adding goals to his locker now. So Chelsea are Chelsea are a team to fear. They're only sitting 2 points behind Liverpool. Granted, Liverpool do have a game in hand because of the cancel game last week, but Chelsea are a scary team to watch. I know I mentioned that Arsenal, they're not that scary in open play. Um, but Chelsea, they're quite frightening. That front three, even with if they alternate between Pedro Neto and Madueke, or whoever on the left side too with Sancho or Neto, like just their front three in general is just frightening. I think it was the 65th minute. Brentford, they get the corner, but Chelsea, they head it and literally straight from that header out, they're on a crazy break. It's so like quick, intricate passing, and they're just on the break. And it was 4-on-2, and ultimately, I think Jadon Sancho picked out the wrong man. I think he should have played Palmer, who could have got a cross in, but that was just like one glimpse where I was like, if you if you lose the ball against Chelsea, you're in big, big trouble. So fair play to them. Like I've said, I think the only position that they might need to upgrade on to really certify them as a title challenging team is their keeper. Although Robert Sanchez did have good saves, I think if they can secure Diogo Costa from um, Porto, that they're going to be a really, really scary team. Um, and then I think if they also upgrade to get an elite center back, just because Wesley Fofana can be good, but at times has a mistake here and there in his locker. Just ever since his ACL injuries, hasn't been like that guy. Um, I think if they can upgrade on the center back, they'll they're going to be a team to really challenging for that title. So Chelsea, they got the 2-1 win, and Buemo, he gets a goal late in the game. Um, but at that point, time was kind of running out already. Um, it's the biggest takeaway, I guess, from this game, and was Cucurella getting a red in 98th minute. So it was a straight red as well, which means he'll miss the next match against Everton. So let me go through the table real quick. I'll just go through the top 10 and then or I'll just go through the entire table just to recap what the table looks like after this weekend. We got Liverpool at first, 36 points. Chelsea second, 34 points. Arsenal third, 30 points. Nottingham fourth with 28 points. City fifth with 27 points. Villa sixth, 25 points. Bournemouth seventh, 24 points, who will play tomorrow against West Ham. And then Fulham eighth with 24 points. Brighton 24 points at ninth. Tottenham 10 points. Uh, or sorry, 10th place with 23 points. Tottenham also wishing a speedy recovery to Destiny Udogie. I know they're already a bit thin in that back line, and he came off injured in the first half, so speedy recovery to him. Brentford at 11th with 23 points. Newcastle 12th with 23 points. United 13th with 22 points. West Ham 14th with 18 points. Palace 15th with 16 points. Everton at 16th with 15 points. Leicester at 17th with 14 points. Ipswich at 18th with 12 points. Wolves at 19th with 9 points. And um, at 20th is Southampton with a shocking 5 points. So that is a table. Apart from Southampton, Wolves and Ipswich kind of battling with Leicester and others for that relegation. Um, and Chelsea only 2 points back, with Liverpool still a game in hand. So if we move on to some of the games coming up, like I mentioned, Bournemouth and West Ham still have to play tomorrow. And then this week is more so of the Carabao Cup games. And then Saturday, uh, with the league back in play, we have to start the weekend 7:30 match, Villa versus City, Brentford, and then 10 o'clock windows, Brentford versus Nottingham Forest, Ipswich versus Newcastle, West Ham versus Brighton. And then 12:30, we have Crystal Palace versus Arsenal. So hopefully I want to see Nketiah get a make an impact. He's been a little quiet for Palace, but hopefully he makes some sort of impact versus a former team. That'll be a storyline of itself. And then games around the league. Saturday at 3 is Barcelona versus Atletico Madrid. That'll be a big one considering Barca and Atletico are tied in points. So Barca looked like they were having a comfortable first place lead, but they've been slipping up a few past weeks here. Lost today versus a very poor side in the La Liga, so La Liga's open. And that's it for Saturday. And then Sunday we have three games at the 9 a.m. window. We have Everton versus Chelsea, Fulham versus Southampton, Leicester versus Wolves. We'll see who Wolves appoint by then, um, or who the interim will be. Sorry, we have a quadruple header at 9 a.m. We also have United versus Bournemouth. And then 11:30 will be a exciting one, Tottenham versus Liverpool. And around the league, Real Madrid versus Sevilla. Real Madrid will always be one to watch in La Liga with all the superstars they have. The other Serie A, not many great matchups. Same with Bundesliga. So with that, this has been another episode of Super Subs Podcast, a roundup of this weekend's Premier League matches. Um, with Harish out on vacation, it might be a little bit until we do our next recording. I may do another roundup next weekend. Um, but we will keep you posted. Definitely, Hurry should be back from vacation here in the next 2 weeks or so. So we might have a few recordings out there during that Christmas time episode, Christmas time. Um, but until then, thank you all again for listening to another episode. And until next time, peace out.